shoes and walk among the groups of two. It's not ideal, it's just how we feel. It's a shame we're easily amused. The only cure for this forward motion is to make emotion fly away. The air is cold, but the water's not frozen. I see ripples rolling every day. Cast a stone and get a hardcore view. Catchphrase of the day is that it's true. There's no coffee talk and only one way to please. It's a shame what you do moves me. The only cure for this forward motion is to make emotion fly away. The air is cold, but the water's not frozen. I see ripples rolling every day. Yeah, I'm not looking for a windswept view. Our change has changed. Nothing's new. Right heart, new song. Mad news. The only cure for this forward motion is to make emotion fly away. The air is cold, but the water's not frozen. I see ripples rolling every day. If I could know what would do wrong, I'd take this smile. The only cure for this forward motion is this smile. The only cure for this forward motion is this smile. The only cure for this forward motion.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Rebellious 1776. My name is Lynn Hurley, and I am here with you to critique, criticize, and fact check our nation's politicians in real time. We love to watch a feisty congressional hearing around here, and we want to know just what the sneaky politicians are saying and what they're doing with our tax dollars. And that is why we started early today for that very reason. So please feel free to share the love and share the show. If you know someone else who would like to know that information as well, then just sit back, grab yourself a snack and a drink. And if you're watching live, please join us in the chat, as we always have something fun to say while we're watching our nation's finest in action. And you know the rest, the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, all that. I'm going to cut it short today because right now on the House floor, they are discussing this massive spending bill in order to avoid a partial government shutdown. But what is in this bill? So many things that are absolutely ridiculous, not necessary, and in some cases harmful to us. So let's just get right to it, and we'll discuss it along the way in the chat. So let me just get it going,
Reserve the
and let me
balance of
know
my
how the
time.
sound is
Gentlelady
for
reserves.
you
The
guys.
gentleman from Connecticut is recognized.
I muted it. There we go.
Mr. Speaker, 11,388 members have
Sound
served
good?
historically in the United States House of Representatives. We are blessed, and what we are charged with is serving the American people. That is our job. It is not serving our individual philosophies, ideologies, or whatever it is that we believe. We need to govern on behalf of the American people. And I'm proud to have been working with Democrats and Republicans united to make government work for the people of this country. It's a bipartisan bill. It sides with hardworking majority of the Americans. It helps to lower that cost of living. It protects women's rights. It reinforces America's global leadership. And yes, it helps our communities be safe and secure. It is not about what we do, is not about those of us who serve in this chamber. It is about what we do on behalf of the people of this country outside of this chamber. This bill serves the American people, and it has
No, it 100%
Democrat
does not.
and Republican support to move forward. We are 6 months into this 2024 year. We have been unable to do the work of the people because some people will hold us back. Again, our job, why we are elected, is to serve the American people. That's what we are charged with. Never forget that we are blessed to serve here, and we have a duty to perform and to do what is right. I urge my colleagues to support this bill. It makes sense for us to do it, and we do it because we represent hard-working families in this country who put their faith and trust in us to do this job on their behalf. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. The gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to Resolution 1102? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those in favor of a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are now ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this is a 15-minute vote on the motion to suspend the rules, which will be followed by a 5-minute vote on the motion to recommit on H.R. 1023 and the passage of H.R. 1023 if ordered. This is a 15-minute vote.
Okay, so hold on just a second, guys. Let me pull this up. Why is it not giving me information on the bill? Hold on. Okay, that's weird. Okay. It's not giving me information on what they're actually voting on right now. Providing for the concurrence by the House in the Senate amendment to HR. So, okay, we'll have to see what exactly title unavailable when I try to pull up information on what they're voting on right now. So let's just wait and see what they have to say about what is going on. So, because I'm not quite sure. So if you're just tuning in, there is a massive spending bill on the line that they need to pass in order to avoid a partial government shutdown. Now, the House of Representative members were given this bill to peruse, I believe, yesterday afternoon or possibly the day before. It's over 1,000 pages, and it includes some pretty crazy things, including $850,000 for a gay senior home, $15 million to pay for Egyptians' college tuitions. Okay. $400,000 for a gay activist group to teach elementary kids about being trans. To me, that's something that you do in your house as their parent. $500K for a DEI zoo. Can somebody please tell me what the heck a DEI zoo is? Like, I read this last night, and all of these things are ridiculous and terrible. But a DEI zoo? That's the one that stood out to me. I was like, what the heck is that? What is a DEI zoo? Is it like gay chimpanzees and trans giraffes? Like, what is a DEI zoo? It makes no sense whatsoever. And $400K for a group to give clothes to teens to help them hide their gender. Again, should be something dealt within the family, not for the government. Not for the government. Yeah, Snoopy, I agree. Was wondering what was in it. 1,000 pages cannot be read overnight. It absolutely cannot. I saw one of the representatives posted something about, like, if the average person reads, say, 300 and something words per minute, 1,000 pages would take, I want to say it was like about a month. It was a while. It was certainly longer than overnight. Apparently, Nancy Pelosi said, "Well, just go ahead and vote for it and then read through it afterwards." Sure, that's what she would like. It is craziness, guys. Actual craziness. And did you see, I'm sure you all did, because the people who watch my show are well read and well informed. Did you see the storming of the gates that happened in El Paso, the safest town, one of the safest towns in America, because it's on the border? The storming of the gates, the breaking through of the razor wire, the pushing through of the National Guard. If you didn't see it, let me pull it up. I might be able to, while they're voting on this, let's see if we can watch it really quick. Here we go. So this happened yesterday in El Paso. Okay. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Hold on. That took down the other thing too. There we go. Side Senator Lankford. It's Lankford. His bill. First of all, that bill is dead, so can't be signed. Second of all, that bill codifies all of the things they're doing right now. It doesn't change anything. And in fact, it takes what they're doing and makes it law. So there's no way that I would ever sign it, nor would I ever want any of my senators or representatives to sign that bill. They're telling you that it's one of the strictest bills in immigration reform ever. That's absolute garbage. It is okay. My 2 cents. You can sit here and try to show me the information, prove to me that I'm wrong, because I've read through the bill. It applies more troops to the border. That's great. But if you're still letting people through, that doesn't do anything. If you're still just letting people into the country, applying more troops to the border, yes, of course that's necessary at this point, especially because of all the people that they've let through. And as we saw what happened yesterday, I agree. We need more troops at the border. We also need a secure border. That bill does not do that. It does not. If you did read it, you didn't read it clearly. It does not allow them to close the border. It allows 5,000 people to be apprehended. And once it gets to that point, then and only then can they shut it down for a specific period of time. It's not indefinitely. It's only for I can't remember how many days. And in addition, the president can still override that if he thinks it's in the nation's best interest. He's allowing that to happen now. What do you think he's going to do? What do you think his judgment call is going to be? That bill is 100%. Please copy and paste it. That bill is 100% ineffective. And it basically puts into law everything they're doing right now. That's why they want that bill. That's why they're telling you it's a tough bill. But regardless, I mean, and you can copy and paste it all you want, and I'm happy to read through it. The bill is dead. There's no point in talking about the bill. The bill is dead. And they didn't even, and they keep going on and on and on about how, oh, well, you wouldn't do this. You wouldn't look at this bill. What about H.R. 2? This Chuck Schumer never brought it to the floor. That actually did pass through the House. The border bill that you're referring to didn't pass through the Senate. It was voted down. It didn't pass the Senate. Therefore, it can't even be brought to the House. H.R. 2 did pass the House. Therefore, it needs to be brought to the Senate. It's Chuck Schumer's had it for a year, haven't even addressed it, haven't even looked at it, still sitting on his desk. So I don't care what they are saying about, oh, this border bill. No. First of all, it got voted down. That bill is dead. It is dead. There's nothing they can do. They can't push it through to the House because it didn't make it past the Senate. That is how the government works. H.R. 2 did go through the House and has moved on to the Senate. Chuck Schumer won't even look at it. Oh, it's been about a year, I think, at this point, Snoop, that they've had H.R. 2. That does have strict border regulations. It helps to bring the border back to when Trump had it at its most secure. Now, Trump, people will say, oh, people came through during Trump. Of course they did, because the Democrats were fighting him tooth and nail all the way. They took him to court several times over the things he was trying to do. Eventually, he did get the border closed and secure. And it was more secure. We've heard Border Patrol official after official testify in Congress, that the border was never more secure than it was under Trump once he was able to get things implemented. Did I turn this sound off on this again, or is it just off? Hold on a second. Sorry, guys. Wait, where am I? No, I guess they just don't have the sound turned on right now. That seems strange. Hold on. I'm going to reload that really quick, guys, because I don't know why there's no sound. People are clearly talking, but maybe they just have it. I guess they haven't muted for whatever reason. Okay, strange, but is what it is. So anyway, I don't know if anyone else is sick and tired of hearing about the Senate border bill, which is dead. There's nothing can be done. It was a terrible bill. There was a reason it didn't pass the Senate. It's not because of Donald Trump. It's because it wasn't a good bill. So people need to stop bringing it up. That is a dead bill. Nothing can be done. It's over. Time to move on. H.R. 2 is still living and breathing on the other hand. A chip at birth with GPS access will make everyone happy. Well, maybe the government. I don't know about us. No, thank you. Yeah, Congress doesn't want the hot mic to overhear them right now. Probably. That's probably exactly why they have the sound turned off, because usually they have the sound on during these. But okay, well, that's fine. I have read it. And you can think, and you know what? Trump did speak. I think Trump did speak to a couple of people, but whether they voted because he spoke to them or not, they're still people who have brains and can think for themselves, and decided that the bill, and rightfully so, was not a good bill. It didn't pass the Senate. The bill is dead. They just want to keep bringing it up because they have nothing else. The Democrats have nothing else to go on, so they just keep trying to resurrect this dead bill. It didn't pass the Senate. Biden has the executive authority. Biden created this mess. You do know about all the executive orders that Biden signed to create this disaster. He has the power to just go back on all of the things that he did that started all this. So please don't believe what you're hearing on mainstream media. They're not giving you accurate information. I was watching this morning, what's the guy, Morning Joe? He's absolutely ridiculous. I sit there and say, what, like, do the Democrats and these Democratic news media sources, do they actually believe the stuff they're saying? There's no way. If you watch them, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous, because the Democrats don't want to fix the border. For months and months and months, they said the border was totally fine. There was nothing wrong with it. Immigration is wonderful. The immigrants, of course, they failed to specify illegal or legal, but it was wonderful. There was no problem. The only time, and I've been watching these hearings for a long time now, the only time the Democrats started admitting there was a problem was when 27 states joined with Texas, and they saw that the American people said, there's a problem. Then, and only then, did the Democrats start saying, there's a problem. Why won't you do this? This is the Republicans' fault. It's not the Republicans' fault. That's a bunch of baloney. It's a bunch of baloney. Morning show, the failed Congress. Yeah, he's crazy. He is crazy. Look, I'm not disagreeing that there needs to be some changes to the immigration system, though there was an immigration judge who said the immigration system works just fine if we actually implement it. Maybe that is the case. But what is happening at the border is not the immigration system. It is an abuse. It is a farce of the immigration system that we have in this country. What is my take on the up and coming eclipse in the government? You mean as in the two together, Nikki? The eclipse and the government? I don't know. The eclipse, I think will be interesting, because I think where I'm at in Ohio, we should be able, I don't think we get to see the full eclipse, but I think we get to see a good portion of it. How the government is playing into that, I have no idea. No clue. No clue. Kosher immigration. The Mayflower. I'm not sure what that means. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It does need to be a united effort, but one, President Biden needs to step up and sign some executive orders. Two, the Democrats have to actually want to close the border and stop letting all of these illegals just into the country with no regard to the safety of the American citizen. And three, they need to stop treating them better than they treat the American citizens. There are a lot of problems with this situation, and people are very angry about it. And Congress seems to just be like, we're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it. It's fine. They're all talk. They aren't doing enough right now. And yeah, it probably is going to take both sides to work on this. But I also think that I'm glad that the Republicans are standing firm and saying, nope, we're not passing a shitty bill that doesn't do anything but cause more harm. Yes, the Mayflower had to do with religious freedom, right? Yeah, because they were escaping persecution or escaping religious persecution. Diversity, equity, and inclusion zoo got my ear behind. What is a DEI zoo? I have no idea. No, the reason that they should not have signed that bill, and this is the last thing I'm going to say about that bill, is because that bill would have put into law all of the problems with the border right now. It would have created those as law. You can't then go back. I hear people say this all the time. Oh, they should just sign this bill, whatever it is, and then change the law later. Do you realize how difficult that is? Once something is law, it is extremely difficult to change it. So they never should sign that bill, ever. There was a reason why that bill died in the Senate. And they say it's a bipartisan bill. I think there was maybe two people. There was Senator Langford and one other Republican, I can't remember who were working on that bill. Two Republicans. The rest of the Senate hadn't seen the bill yet. That's not a bipartisan bill. I guess in theory you could say technically it is, but it's not a group effort. You can appeal a law, but it's very difficult. And Congress can change a law, but it's very difficult. Why create more problems? Yeah, I know that is what it is, the DEI zoo, but I don't know what that means. Like, what what does a DEI zoo have within it? It makes no sense. Mitch McConnell probably was, yeah, the other one. That's who I was thinking, but I wasn't 100% sure. But I wouldn't doubt it if he was the other one. But yeah, there's that bill is dead. That bill is terrible. We need to move on. Okay, oh dang, still 234 people haven't voted. That is absolutely crazy. All right, people, come on. What is taken? I hate this. I wish they would stick to these time limits on these votes instead of just lollygagging. I really do. Either that or they say, okay, if you haven't voted by the time it's done, you don't get to vote. They had to. Now they've been there. They've been there arguing and talking about things. So hopefully they'll get their butts in gear and start moving. But they certainly seem to just be like taking their sweet old time, don't they? Ugh, it's crazy. I know there are some hearings going on, or at least I know there was one this morning. The House Armed Services had a hearing. Technology and AI fight for the 21st century operations in the Department of Defense. Actually sounds like a really interesting hearing. But there aren't any other hearings, so there shouldn't be, and I don't think that one's still going on. I'd be surprised if it was, because it started earlier than usual. It started at 9. Actually, I think it started at 8:30, if I remember. I got a notification for it, but was Katie Britt the second author of the bill? I'm not sure. But it, regardless, doesn't matter. I still think it was a terrible bill. I don't care who worked on it. Yeah. So never heard of Katie Britt was the senator who gave the response to the State of the Union. Hey, Chris, how are you? So nice to see you here. So nice to see you. We're just waiting on this bill or this vote. It's not necessarily a bill, but you got out of the party system. I mean, I know a lot of people that have an issue with the two-party system. I don't have an issue with the two-party system. You know, people say, well, Congress never gets anything done. That's the point, actually. That's the reason why the two-party system was set up, is because it is an adversarial system. It's meant to be that way. Because if they agreed on everything and just passed everything, there'd be no debate. There needs to be debate. You need to have very few things pass through, because that way, in theory, you flush out the weaker laws, the things that aren't going to be representative of what is the, for the best for this country. And that's why we have an adversarial system, that two-party system. So yes, there is much corruption in our government. We all know that, right? But in reality, there isn't any government that doesn't have some corruption. Even our founding fathers, a year or two after sort of establishing our government, were already dealing with corruption within the government. They knew that that was it's kind of it's a fact of life as far as government goes. There's always going to be corruption, because because it's made up of human beings, and human beings are susceptible to corruption. It's Yes, it's just in our nature to a certain extent. But in theory, the two-party system is put in place for a good reason, because there's meant to be that discussion back and forth, that debate back and forth. It should be difficult to pass new laws and new legislation. Well, adversarial doesn't mean angry. Adversarial meaning in two opposed sides. So yeah, it could be, yeah, absolutely a debate of cool heads. But trust me, the founding fathers didn't all have cool heads too. There was just as much going on back then as there is now. They were still people too. I love the founding fathers. I think that they were brilliant. I think that it was a radical system of government, but they were very careful in the way that they crafted it. They were also careful in the way that they worded things so that the Constitution, which was a very radical document at the time, could survive in perpetuity. That's why there are so many sort of specifics, but in very generalistic terms. That's why we debate over, specific terms, because they worded things very particularly so that it would be able to continue to be used. They knew things would change and modernize and expand, and they knew the country would grow. Oh my goodness. You remember Aaron Burr? They most certainly did. They went after each other violently. That's right. David F. Welcome. That's why a revolt is mentioned in the Constitution when the checks and balances don't work or becomes tyrannical. Absolutely right. That's why we have the Second Amendment. People forget that when the founding fathers wrote the Constitution, they had just come out of a revolt. They had just come out of a revolution, right? So for them, it was extremely important that the people be able to bear arms to rise up against a tyrannical government. That is the entire point of the Second Amendment. And also the point of the First, to be able to have free speech, and very specifically to protect our core political speech, because they wanted people to, one, be able to speak out against a tyrannical government, and two, defend themselves against said tyrannical government if and when the time came. Now, they also said, hey, look, don't go after the government just because you don't like a particular, one particular law or something. They said it needs to be, it needs to be done with cool heads, right? Make sure that this is truly a tyrannical government. They didn't want just like uprising after uprising after uprising. But Thomas Jefferson himself did talk about how it was necessary in order to have liberty, that we needed to have revolts to remind the government that the people were in charge, and the government could be taken out at any point in time if they got too big for their britches. Where does it state that in the Second Amendment? It doesn't. There's nothing in the Second Amendment that specifies what types of weapons you can have. The right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed implies implicitly that there are no qualifications on that. Now, of course, they do that, which is against the Constitution, but they don't care. I think you might want to go back and review some of your history, my 2 cents. They had a lot of issues back then. They were characters. There were a lot of characters. Not according to the Constitution. Not according to the Constitution. I'm a paralegal. I am very familiar with the law. According to the Constitution, you can. According to our laws, you're correct. You can't. But that's not the intention in the Second Amendment, was to prohibit people from carrying certain arms. During Washington's administration, they had the Whiskey Rebellion. They did, because they wanted to tax whiskey. And the people were like, hell no. And there was a group, it sort of became a mini militia, who were rising up against the Whiskey Rebellion. They did arrest them. They later dropped the charges. But yeah, there was, in fact, a Whiskey Rebellion. That's true. That is 100% false. That is propaganda that you have been told they cannot ban any weapon. Or they can't ban just any weapon. They shouldn't be banning any weapon, period. But no, they can't ban a weapon. That's why they haven't done it. Do you think if they could ban anything they wanted to, any weapons they wanted to, they wouldn't have already done it? There's a reason why they haven't. Now, they try time and time again. They try to ban everything they can, but no. The AR-15 was designed for civilian use. Oh, I was trying to find that, Snoop, the law or the case you were talking about that involves machine guns, and one person wanting to own a new machine gun is now in the courts of Texas. Is that the one that was talking about bump stocks? Is that one what you're thinking of? NRA fights for our rights. They do. They do. Um, the Second Amendment is crucial to our country. All right, let's see. Where are we at? We've got 49 people. All right, well, we're making some progress. It was 235. No bump stocks. Okay, I'll have to keep looking for that case that you're talking about, Snoop. The involves machine guns and a person wanting to own a new machine gun in Texas. I'll have to look for it. I haven't seen that one yet. They pointed to 2004 when the AR-15 re-entered the gun market after the end of the federal assault weapons ban. Assault weapon, first of all, is a ridiculous term. Every gun is an assault weapon. At a time of heightened interest in the military. You know what? I will look into it, my 2 cents. But it is my understanding that the AR-15 was specifically designed for civilian use. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I am, but maybe I am. I know someone who is very familiar with the Second Amendment and Second Amendment rights. But I'll do some research. Like, I'm not above saying that I might be wrong. I don't think so, but I might be. It's not unheard of. Come on, people. All right, down to 45. Oh, Lordy. That's why I hate watching. Like, I love and hate watching the live House floor. For this reason, if they stuck to these time limits, do you know how much faster things would go? It's crazy. It's crazy. Let me see. Snoop, do you have a... Hold on, Snoop. Let me make it so that you can post the link. All right, there you go. I was told I couldn't have a cannon, so I bought one. You're my kind of guy, David. I was just saying that yesterday. If somebody tells me not to say something, I'll say it like 20 times in the next 3 sentences. It's just in my nature. Hey, you know what? I'm related to someone who signed the Declaration of Independence. That revolutionary like spirit just runs through my blood. Well, the problem with inclusivity, as the Democrats try to sell it, is that it is very exclusive. Because if you don't agree with their version of inclusivity, you're wrong, you're terrible, you're a horrible human being. That's not inclusive. Inclusive should be everybody has a right to think what they think. Bradley, you're on thin ice already, my dude. Okay, let's change our terminology here. Assault weapon is every gun. Every gun assaults. that is in their very nature. They are assault weapons. This is one of the things that the Democrats like to do. They're very good with wordplay. Very good with wordplay. Oh, flag on the field. Kashi Chris is called flag on the field. Yes, Bradley. She saw what you said yesterday, too. We did. We all did. Saw what you said. Oh, my Lord. Could these people move any slower? At least let us listen to what they're chattering about. I like it when we can hear them talking because you never know what they're going to say. Should we take votes? How long is it going to take? 30 people? Or take a bet's with no bet, but we know what you did last summer. Bradley is in the doghouse. The chatting about what's for lunch, who won the game. Probably. Yeah, that's true. It is almost lunchtime, isn't it? Right. Yeah. It's crazy. Mm. So, I don't know how long this is going to take. What did I say yesterday? I reread it and saw nothing. Did you? Okay. Well, then I suppose there is no apology necessary. You guys missed it. So for those of you that know or don't know, I live right near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I don't know what flew overhead right before we started because clearly I'm inside, so I couldn't see it. Some plane. Literally, it flew right over the house. I grew up on Air Force bases. I'm a military brat, but it was like an F-16 going by, but like right over the house. It literally shook the house. It was crazy. And I know we get some crazy planes here at Wright Pat from time to time, but normally, uh, I wish we got more flybys at my house or near my house because I love seeing the planes fly overhead. Like I said, I grew up with that. I usually don't really get any, but this one, man, it was either really loud or really low or both. But it sounded like an F-16. It was pretty crazy. I know they're not. I don't think they're using F-16s anymore. F-35. I don't know what it was. It was. I couldn't see it, so couldn't tell you what it was. But it shook the house. I was like, dang. It's a very distinctive sound if you know military jets. They have a very distinctive sound compared to just a regular airplane. But I was like, what in the world? That was crazy. Yeah, that was my response too. What? I was like, dang. Oh, all right. We're down to 21 people. Come on. Oh, goodness. There really needs to be a time limit. Even if they have like, okay, you've got 15 minutes to vote. Even if they give them like you get an additional 5 minutes, that's it. There's got to be at some point they cut them off, right? I think Congress just specifically does things to take forever. Like it's their plan to sit there and say, we're going to make this last a really long time. Maybe people will stop watching. But we're not. We're here. We're watching you. We got our eyes on you, Congress. Let's see, where are we? I mean, yeah, can't they just call it? Clearly the yays have it. Those extra 19 votes aren't going to make a difference. I mean, this one's not even close. If it's close, I could see, but come on. I don't know when they started this. This morning I turned on the computer and I was like, dang, they're already talking about all this stuff. So yeah, exactly. David has it just right. Just like the government, hurry up and wait. I know. It's painful. It's like being at the DMV, right? Or the RMV or the BMV, whatever you call it in your state. It is painful. So I moved here to Ohio a year ago. I've lived here before, but moved back here a year ago. And the BMV here on the TV screens while you're waiting, they have jokes. There are actually some pretty funny ones. I was like, you know what? That's not a bad idea. At least give people something to look at instead of each other. Because there's always crazy people at the DMV, isn't there? Like, always. You're just kind of like, wow, these people have a license. Awesome. At least that's what I think. Anyway. All right, we're down to 17, 16. All right. They knew I was looking. They're like, one more person votes, so she'll shut up. Oh, did you guys see Jamal Bowman talking about the new Green Deal housing? Yeah. It's just right out of the Democratic Socialists of America playbook. It really is, legitimately is right out of their plan. I was like, oh my gosh, here we go. Here we go. He got kicked out of the Democratic Socialists of America. I can't remember. There was one vote they didn't like that he did, so they kicked him out. My 2 cents, you clearly don't know me very well. My response is not my problem. Everybody else needs to figure that out. That's not my problem. I have to deal with my own housing situation. Everyone else has to deal with their own housing situation. That's the way that it is. You think it's different anywhere else unless you're going to a socialist country? No, it's not. You figure out your own housing situation. A good housing bill? Find your own housing. That's a good housing bill. I don't think it's the government's job to find housing for the people. It's not their job. In fact, if we want to go back to the founding fathers, their job, they said the government was neither here to hurt you nor help you in your way in life. That's not the government's role. It is absolutely socialism. 100%. They want to provide housing. They want to provide housing. They want to provide you with a car. They want to provide you with a living wage, they call it. All of that is socialism. Excuse me. I recommend you go read the Democratic Socialists of America. They give a very good description of what their plan is. And democratic socialism is a democratic stepping stone to communism. It 100% is that. All right, 15 people. Good Lord, they're moving at just a snail's pace here, aren't they? Are they trying my patience today? Always. They're always trying my patience. All right, we're gonna give them a little bit of time, and then we're gonna watch something else if they can't get a move on here. Oh, yes, absolutely. Have you seen those? I mean, of course you have. It's ridiculous. Those squatters' rights? No. 100% no. Get out. It is not your house. Get out. And the people that own the house, like the one lady who changed the locks, she gets arrested? That is 100% ridiculous. There's no other word for it. It's absolutely ridiculous. Insanity. Insanity. Uh, and there was another squatter who killed a woman in New York, cut her up into pieces. I don't know if it was one person or more than one. Cut her up in pieces and put her in her duffel bag. Ugh, it's gruesome. It's terrible. This country is it's
On this vote, the yeas are 286, the nays are 134. 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
okay. So let's see if they're going to have any more debate or if it's
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on agreeing to the motion to recommit on H.R. 1023, offered by the gentleman from California, Mr. Peters, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will redesignate the motion.
Motion to recommit H.R. 1023, offered by Mr. Peters of California.
The question is on agreeing to the motion to recommit. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
okay, guys. Well, it looks like they're probably just moved on to the votes at this point in time. I don't know if looks like they're probably done with all of the debating. We came in at the tail end of it. We missed it. We got to hear the lady with the purple hair. So I'm going to say let's do what we had planned to do and watch the Oversight Committee hearing that they had yesterday on the title of it. Let me go back. Hold on. Sorry, I'm looking again. They did a lot yesterday. Like I said, anybody who doesn't think Congress works doesn't look at their schedule. Yeah, reviewing controls to prevent mismanagement of foreign aid. So let me pull that up and we'll watch that. Oh my gosh, the kitten is going crazy. All right, so hold on. Let me take that down and do this. And oh, I can still hear the, okay. There we go. And then we are still going to watch the hearing on AI this afternoon as well, which is why I want to get this one started. No, that's not the one I want. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. Is that the very beginning? Oh, for goodness sakes. Come on now. Yeah, I guess that was the beginning. Okay.
Taxpayer dollars are being spent on foreign aid.
Okay. There you go.
The World Bank, even the World Bank, estimates that 20% of foreign aid is lost to corruption each year, and that 30% of foreign aid fails to reach its intended target. The committee has a long history of conducting oversight on how few guardrails are in place when it comes to vetting contractors and grantees, leaving foreign assistance vulnerable to exploitation and undermining U.S. strategic goals. Today, we'll examine whether, and if so, how the U.S. government ensures that taxpayer-funded foreign aid achieves its objectives while safeguarding those dollars from being diverted to unintended or unlawful purposes. We'll examine how USAID and Department of State monitor and evaluate their programs to make sure they're meeting
You
their
and I
intended
are in
goals.
agreement here, my friend. I agree. We should
Recently,
limit aid.
the
Get our
USAID
own
Inspector
house in
General
order.
has cautioned that foreign aid is going to Gaza and the West Bank, or foreign aid going to Gaza and the West Bank, is at extremely high risk of waste, fraud, and abuse. In 2022 and 2023, the United States donated over $700 million to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, an organization created and intended to provide humanitarian relief for the Palestinians. What did we find out? We now know the Hamas compound was located under UNRWA, an UNRWA building in Gaza City. Further evidence surfaced that some UNRWA employees participated in the devastating October 7th Hamas attack against Israel on Israeli soil. Unfortunately, the Biden administration has been sending taxpayer dollars to UNRWA since 2021, despite concerns that funds were being diverted to support terrorist activities. That's why the previous administration had held funds from UNRWA. The Biden administration unwisely reversed this decision, and taxpayer dollars were released to UNRWA without adequate guardrails to ensure the funds went for humanitarian relief rather than Hamas terrorists, and were only paused again after reports about UNRWA's support for terrorist activities surfaced a few weeks ago. That's why I led a request with committee chairman Comer and other Republican members of this committee to Secretary Blinken requesting documents and information about the Biden administration's 2021 decision to restore funding to UNRWA. Understand this decision will hopefully help us better understand if, and if so, how the administration tracks foreign assistance in other places around the world. The committee's oversight of foreign assistance is critically important, not only to ensure taxpayer dollars are being well spent, but also to know whether the federal government is providing foreign assistance from falling into the hands of terrorists or other malicious actors. A recent poll by the Associated Press found that 4 in 10
Good
U.S.
Lord, someone
adults
get the man a cough
said
drop.
foreign policy should be a top priority for the U.S. government. That's twice as many who mentioned the topic on the same survey conducted in 2022. This poll shows the increased anxiety the American public feels when it comes on how the U.S. conducts itself on the world stage. Unfortunately, this administration made another reckless decision. During his recent State of the Union speech, President Biden announced plans for the U.S. military to build a temporary port to deliver more humanitarian assistance to Gaza. The president decided to maroon approximately 1,000 American uniformed men and women off the coast of Gaza to build, using taxpayers' dollars again, a supposed humanitarian aid port without providing assurances that Hamas will not attack our troops or those receiving the aid, or that Hamas will not divert that aid for its own evil purposes. Foreign aid to Gaza is not the only area of foreign assistance that requires scrutiny here today. The U.S. heavily relies on direct budget assistance to foreign governments. It's vital that Congress and the administration establish robust oversight mechanisms to prevent corruption and diversion of these funds. It always kind of amazes me. These countries always say they need funds, but they seem to disappear. Any assistance to Ukraine must also be conditioned on the principle that they will allow full transparency, commit to tracking weapons and equipment, and open their books to the U.S. government. Additionally, most of the money going to the Ukraine flows to the World Bank or other public international organizations. We owe it to the American people to demand greater accountability and transparency from multilateral organizations to ensure their operations align with our national interests and values. Lastly, we cannot ignore the allegations of political abuse surrounding the Biden administration's use of foreign aid. The politicization of aid distribution, including the imposition of conditions based on ideological agendas, including DEI goals and left-wing climate policies, threatens to undermine the credibility and effectiveness of our foreign assistance. Oversight of foreign assistance is not merely a matter of fiscal responsibility, but a reflection of strategic goals. Today's hearing represents an opportunity to identify shortcomings, propose reforms, and ensure that USAID serves as a force of good in the world. I look forward to the insights and recommendations that will emerge from today's discussion and our esteemed witness panel. I'd now like to recognize the ranking member for the purpose of making an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We obviously know that oversight of our federal budget is very important, and it's certainly important that that part of that oversight is federal aid as well. Foreign aid. Foreign aid we know is about 1% of the federal budget, comparable to defense spending, which we know is about 12% of the budget. That 1% makes an incredible impact across the world. Certainly and not just obviously in some of the conflict zones where foreign aid oftentimes is really critical, but also in building our relationships with our allies, but also strengthening our position across the globe. We know that as we speak, foreign aid is also critical in some of our conflict zones. And unfortunately, my friends in the majority right now are currently blocking about $60 billion of support to Ukraine in our fight against Russia. This is aid that is absolutely crucial to help the Ukrainian people defend themselves. Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom and democracy against Vladimir Putin, a war criminal who has attacked America's democracy as well. And here are some facts. Our government has more than 400 people working to oversee foreign aid. The inspectors general from the Defense Department, State Department, the U.S. Agency for International Development, all work with 20 other federal agencies and the Ukrainian government. There is deep oversight with how we spend our support and our tax dollars from here at home. I also want to make sure that I ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record this list of more than 145 completed, ongoing, and planned oversight reports and investigations from the Special Inspector General for Operation Atlantic Resolve.
Without objection.
Thank you. The Ukrainians themselves are fighting for their existence. They want and need our aid to make the biggest possible impact as well. Now, Transparency International's 2023 report on international corruption reported that Ukraine has made significant progress taking on corruption even during the challenges of war. Now, wartime Ukraine climbed 12 places in the 2023 edition of this annual survey. Now, the report found, and I want to quote, that Ukraine's growth by 3 points is one of the best results over the past year in the entire world, end quote. Now, we know there are challenges, and certainly a lot of folks like to point out where there's areas that we can improve. And conducting oversight in a war zone is hard when we can't access, of course, the front line. But this foreign aid is critical, especially at this moment. Now, at the outset of the conflict, U.S. personnel in Ukraine had to be evacuated. We all know this. Over the course of the next 6 months, U.S. agencies worked diligently to establish logistic hubs in partner nations to oversee the transfer of aid and equipment. It's important to note that up until this conflict, end-use monitoring of defense articles had only been executed in a peacetime environment, which meant the U.S. government could conduct site visits and have greater access. Now, our agencies conducting oversight of aid to Ukraine had to develop entirely new procedures for conducting this work in a hostile environment. Now, my friends in the majority like to, of course, also talk about issues around the border. And we, of course, haven't had a single hearing on push factors that drive people to migrate. But we know that foreign aid and additional foreign aid would also have a huge impact on what is happening along the border, and certainly to help the people of Mexico, Central America, and South America. We should have a hearing that examines the root causes of our global problems and work to remediate those. Now, our humanitarian aid fights, we know that our humanitarian aid fights displacement by addressing these root causes. Poverty and climate change, we know, are also huge factors. And when we look at migration that's happening, for example, in Guatemala or Honduras, there are huge challenges that could also be addressed with support from the United States and the world as it relates to human aid. The humanitarian crisis in Venezuela has been an enormous driver of folks coming to the border. We used to have thousands of folks from Venezuela come to the border, and now we've had, in some years, hundreds of thousands of folks from Venezuela coming to the border. We know that in countries where criminal gangs may control the police or the government, our U.S. assistance is vital to also fight corruption and insecurity. In Guatemala, for instance, we funded a UN commission of independent prosecutors that help prosecute, take on military death squads, take on rogue police officers, drug cartels, and even 2 presidents. That commission helped cut homicides, by the way, by 32%, dismantle 60 criminal networks, and catalyze the indictment of 680 bad actors across the country. President Biden has fought to strengthen that commission even when he was vice president. So there's a lot of work that we can do around human aid. I want to ask also for unanimous consent to introduce this report from the Washington Office of Latin America, called When the Dominoes Fall, corruption of the justice system in Guatemala, into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. So just like in Ukraine, there are attacks by some on foreign aid that has harmed innocent people, weakened American values, and harmed our national interests. Foreign aid is critical in our success as a country and in our national security interests as well. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I'm pleased to introduce our witnesses today. First of all, going across here, Jim Richardson, Executive Director to former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Chairman of the Pompeo Foundation. Previously, he was the Director of the Office of Foreign Assistance at the Department of State and has decades in private and government service. Next, Max Pomorek, a Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom. Previously, he was the Acting Chief Operating Officer at USAID during the Trump administration. And finally, Charles Kinney, Senior Fellow at the Center for Global Development. Previously worked for the World Bank, focusing on anti-corruption relating to infrastructure and natural resources. Again, I want to thank all three of you for being here today. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that it's the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Good. We keep the record going. Let the record show that the witnesses answered in the affirmative. Thank you. You may take a seat. We appreciate you being here and look forward to your testimony. Let me remind the witnesses that we've read your written statement and it will appear in full in the hearing record. So if you can, try to limit your opening statement to about 5 minutes. As a reminder, please push the button on the microphone in front of you so that it is on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your five minutes are up, and wrap up as quickly as you can. I'll now recognize Mr. Richardson for your opening statement.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss how we can improve U.S. foreign assistance. As the chairman said, my name is Jim Richardson, and it's a great honor to be back here in the House, having spent much of my career in Rayburn before heading to the executive branch during the Trump administration. My first stop was to reorganize the U.S. Agency for International Development. Undertaking one of the largest reorganizations of the agency in history, we moved to a more data-informed and goal-oriented approach and worked to realign our structures, people, and systems to match. After USAID, I was the director of the Office of Foreign Assistance at the State Department. There, I coordinated assistance across USAID and state on behalf of the Secretary. Needless to say, I've encountered lots of obstacles and a lot of potential in our foreign aid. As we discuss how to improve it, I want to press three things. 1, strategic alignment. 2, a renewed focus on effectiveness. And number 3, a careful selection of our partners and instruments to maximize the impact of our assistance and ensure aid be used to advance narrow political ideologies, as the chairman mentioned. This is both wasteful and dangerous. Our nation is facing real challenges, from China to drug cartels to terrorism to mass migration on our southern border. With limited resources, it's imperative that we carefully choose where and outcomes. Whether facilitating self-reliance, promoting bilateral trade, or advancing strategic goals, our assistance must produce measurable results that actually matter to the American people. We must constantly reevaluate existing programs, stop ineffective ones, and embrace innovative ideas that suit and away from more traditional approaches that have often proven ineffective. Take Ukraine, for instance, a topic of conversation already here today. Here, economic development is robust. And so instead of providing economic assistance grants, we should transition to more of a loan-based assistance. Loans can foster economic self-reliance and encourage responsible fiscal management. Finally, I want to touch on how we engage with those who implement our insistence. As you know, the United States utilizes a wide variety of nonprofits, for-profits, and international organizations to implement its programs. First, we need to reduce our reliance on public international organizations, PIOs, specifically the UN family. Working directly through the PIOs is inherently less transparent and less accountable. Instead, we should select partners who can best accomplish the task with maximum control and accountability. This is often a local partner, which has an added benefit of building the capacity of the host country. Once identified, rigorous vetting processes are essential to ensure the suitability and integrity of our partners. We must ensure that all partners, including PIOs, are subject to the same vetting standards. Given what happened in Gaza, as the chairman mentioned, it is essential that we vet our PIOs. If we have to use them, they have to be vetted. And that includes the NGOs that work with them that the PIOs actually fund. Furthermore, we must vet partners beyond just ties to terrorism, which is our current standard. While terrorism remains a paramount concern, we want to make sure that American taxpayers remain at the hands of a wide range of bad actors, including drug traffickers and wildlife poachers. Foreign assistance is an incredibly complex topic, so I appreciate your willingness to hold this hearing and look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I'd like to recognize Mr. Primorak for your opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the subcommittee to speak about America's foreign aid apparatus. Again, my name is Max Primorak. I work at the Heritage Foundation. The views I expressed here at testimony are my own and should not be construed as representing any official position of the Heritage Foundation. Mr. Chairman, I've spent over 30 years in the foreign aid sphere as an NGO practitioner in the Balkans, as USAID contractor in Afghanistan, think tank expert, and also as a senior official at the U.S. Agency for International Development, as well as U.S. Department of State. I served as an envoy of the Vice President to carry out his counter-genocide programs in Iraq. It is, however, with great sadness that I must describe our foreign aid apparatus as broken and even corrupt. Foreign aid is a tool of foreign policy, as Jim has mentioned. Its purpose is to promote the national interest of the United States. In the past, foreign aid helped curb the spread of communism. After the fall of communism, it helped integrate Central and Eastern Europe into NATO and become strong allies. Millions of lives have been saved by our global disaster responses. But the foreign aid budget has become too big. Our federal agencies cannot fulfill their management and oversight functions. The result is substantial waste, fraud, and abuse. A well-financed and politicized aid industrial complex lobbies Congress for higher foreign aid budgets and against reforms to hold them accountable. Worse, foreign aid is misused to export radical ideas that offend many Americans, erode our talent base in our aid workforce, and trample on the religious beliefs in countries where we provide aid. This benefits communist China. So, what reforms are needed to restore the critical global role that U.S. foreign aid once played in advancing America's national interest? First, Congress must make deep cuts in the international affairs budget to a level our federal agencies can reasonably manage. When I launched the new Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance and its $8 billion portfolio, I was impressed by the response capabilities of our workforce, but deeply troubled at the inability to track where this aid was going. Mr. Chairman, as you've mentioned, American taxpayers now know that millions of dollars of U.S. aid to Gaza was diverted to Hamas to finance a terror network that led to the October 7th massacres of over 1,000 Israeli citizens. Through aid diversion, we are also financing terrorists in Yemen, Syria, and Afghanistan. Years of humanitarian aid have destroyed the ability of countries to feed themselves. While on special assignment to Haiti, I asked local entrepreneurs why their farmers couldn't feed their country. Their dry response was that it is hard to compete against free food. Second, defunding the climate agenda will reduce global poverty and hunger. Foreign aid policy discourages countries, especially poor countries, from developing their fossil fuel industries to secure cheap energy, generate revenues to finance their own social services, and reduce the cost of food. Instead, we are forcing these countries to rely on communist China to meet their wind and solar equipment needs. Third, we need more transparency and accountability. Congress must require that all aid awards and subawards be made public. A recent government audit found that USAID did not know the overhead charges of almost $142 billion in awards. Procurement fraud by international organizations has become an endemic. Instead, we should increase funding to church-based local NGOs rather than expensive UN agencies and for-profit contractors. Fourth, we must de-radicalize our aid programs. We must stop pushing DEI, abortion, and other gender policies overseas, norms that contradict those in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Lastly, we must refocus our foreign aid approach towards partnership with America's private sector to increase trade and investment with the Global South. To do this, we must amend the BUILD Act to strengthen the U.S. International Development Corporation as a tool, as a counter-China tool, and expand the role of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, which rewards economic reformers. To conclude, the objective of foreign aid must be to end the need for it. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Kenny, your opening statement.
Chairman Grothman, Ranking Member Garcia, members of the subcommittee, thanks very much for inviting me today. I'm a senior fellow at the Center for Global Development, but I'm speaking very much on my own behalf today. I've spent a number of years researching corruption in foreign aid and aid effectiveness more generally, and in previous work for the World Bank, I managed aid programs, including some in fragile states. I want to make 2 points. First, corruption and financial mismanagement is a real problem globally with negative implications for both development and foreign assistance, but it does not stop that assistance having a major impact. Second, reducing upstream bureaucracy and focusing on impact through transparency and tracking results is the best way to deliver more effective aid. Every year, the global total of bribe payments may be as high as 2% of GDP. Beyond corruption, considerable government finance is wasted on projects that don't deliver what they promised due to factors ranging from incompetence to fraud. And US government spending, including US foreign assistance, is not immune from those problems. That said, US civilian aid is some of the most closely monitored of all government spending. And that monitoring suggests that while malfeasance does occur, it is comparatively rare on average. Let me provide some examples. Between 2012 and 2020, SIGAR, the Special Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction, issued 176 audit reports covering 8.5 billion in costs for Afghanistan reconstruction, and only about 0.4% of the audited costs were eventually disallowed. Again, the Ukraine Special Inspector General report of February this year noted that USAID carried out spot checks that traced expenditures reported by the Ukrainian government to verify that direct budget support was received by intended beneficiaries. Of 475 spot checks, all were carried out without any major issues identified. Of course, special inspectors general and integrity departments don't and never will be able to audit every penny to the last recipient. Whatever the level of control, we will never be able to ensure zero waste or fraud. But what we can say is that leakage rates are usually low. And again, we can say it with more confidence about civilian foreign assistance flows than we can about a lot of other government finance. But take Afghanistan again. When assistance failed, and surely a lot of assistance failed in Afghanistan, not least, for example, when it came to helping the Afghan National Army become an effective fighting force, it was because of problems that don't appear in financial audit reports. Conversely, a lot of aid with somewhat inadequate paperwork managed to have a very meaningful and positive impact. For example, starting in 2002, USAID supported the Afghan Ministry of Health delivering a basic package of healthcare services to 90% of the country at a cost of about $4.50 per person per year. USAID focused on results and used independent evaluations to ensure that the vaccinations happened and that services were provided. The results speak for themselves. The proportion of kids who died before their 5th birthday in Afghanistan fell from about 13% in 2001 to about 6% in 2020. That declining mortality rate is saving more kids each year in Afghanistan than the total number born in Nebraska, Nevada, and Kansas combined. And US assistance can take a big part of the credit. It is these results that matter, that aid is saving lives and promoting economic growth. Getting these results is why we provide the assistance in the first place. And an excess focus on monitoring receipts and processes can get in the way of achieving that. Back in 2010, Andrew Natsios, USAID administrator under President George W. Bush, complained of the counter-bureaucracy of excessive process and control mechanisms fighting against aid effectiveness. Natsios suggested a third or more of USAID staff were hired purely to deal with compliance issues. And he asked, are we creating a system where every taxpayer dollar is accounted for that is incapable of carrying out its national security tasks? I think that question is even more urgent today. Congress has put in place some of the underpinnings for a results-based accountability agenda, including the Foreign Aid Transparency and Accountability Act. But I'd urge you to go further. Rather than an accountability model excessively based on processes and receipts, we should rebalance. We should be doing more to survey beneficiaries. We should be more to physically audit infrastructure financed under all aid projects. Where possible, rather than paying for potential outcomes, we should be basing payments on achieved results. Combined with transparency in project delivery targets that allow beneficiaries themselves to act as monitors, these approaches can ensure impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll now recognize myself for first of all, we'll start with Mr. Primorak. In the report you authored, released in May 2022, called Congress Must Stop Biden's Misuse of U.S. Foreign Aid to Impose His Radical Social Agenda, and by the way, part of the fault has to come from Congress who wanted him to do that, U.S. foreign aid has become an appendage of one political party seeking to advance its radical global agenda of ideological indoctrination. That's what you said. Can you elaborate what you meant by that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you for raising that issue. I think that Chairman Mike McCall of the House Foreign Affairs Committee put it well when he learned, for example, that the State Department was spending a massive amount of money, not only in the past, but in the future, in strengthening its DEI structures within state. The same thing is over at USAID, and he commented how DEI is enforced. Now foreign aid and civil service officers must pledge allegiance to the DEI agenda or else risk not being promoted. One of my colleagues, formerly of the USAID, looked at FEC, Federal Election Commission data regarding political contributions. And at the State Department and at the USAID, you're talking about 97, 94% to one party. When you're looking at the top contractors for USAID, and you're talking about companies that are earning billions of dollars, again, you look at their FEC contributions, it's almost 100%, and on and on and on. What this has done has really harmed our workforce, in which anybody who doesn't agree with this Marxist-inspired DEI and other radical ideology is not welcomed. So you basically have a one-party aid industrial complex, both in the bureaucracy, but also in the aid community. I'll just read to you really quickly. For instance, Interaction is a coalition of humanitarian aid organizations. Their DEI statement is that anti-Blackness is rooted in white supremacy and refers to a white gaze, G-A-Z-E, that places people of color against a model of whiteness. You have another major coalition of aid, U.S. aid contractors talking about self-identity as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC, women, genderqueer, non-binary, LGBTQIA plus, people with disabilities, and those from formerly or currently colonized countries. Basically, what this industry has told America, that if you are conservative, if you're Republican, if you're independent, you're a moderate Democrat, which is the vast majority of America, there's no place for you to work in this industry. Thank you.
Very, very illuminating. I personally believe the reason we couldn't get along with the people in Afghanistan is these State Department types were what most people around the world would be considered left-wing extremists. Next question, how can Congress prohibit, well, first of all, I guess you gave me some. Can you give me any other examples of how the administration weaponizes foreign aid programs?
Well, I can give you an example of one project that is stunning. It's a $45 million 5-year program to support global NGOs around the world. And I remember reading about this project and looking at the request for applications, looking at a footnote and mentioning that the inspiration for the theory working behind it was an Italian Marxist. And I looked at some of her work, and one of her panels that she led was titled Marxism in Social Movements, Is Marx Back in Social Theory? We are literally financing a global network of anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-Western NGOs.
It doesn't surprise me, but it's horrible. Mr. Richardson, a lot of members of this body are concerned about the amount of foreign assistance we're giving around the world when we have our own crisis at the southern border. Can you discuss how the U.S. should be monitoring the works of public international organizations involved at our southern border? How do we ensure these PIOs are not working against U.S. interests? And can you give me examples where you think they are?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I think the bottom line is that you have a lot of PIOs, a lot of the UN family organizations are providing billions of dollars in funding to NGOs to help migrants make the journey north. And obviously there's a lot of cash assistance, food support, but they are encouraging, in a way, the migration from the South. Obviously that goes against, I think, what most Americans are looking for, which is a decrease. And in fact, it's against what even the Biden administration is saying, that they don't want these migrants to come. And yet we're continuing to fund the PIOs that ultimately are doing this. The challenge, as I mentioned in my statement, the challenge with working with PIOs and the UN family in particular is once you give the money, you almost lose all visibility and transparency and accountability. It goes into a big pot, and then the UN folks get to decide how and where to use it. Furthermore, as I mentioned in my statement, we don't currently vet PIOs or the people that they work with. So the money just goes to the UN organizations. We have no idea who these people are, who are ultimately getting these funds. We can't track it. We don't know if these organizations are attached to cartels or human smugglers. It'd be pretty smart if they were. Because obviously knowing the flow of resources and humans would be pretty interesting to human traffickers. But it's that type of challenge that we can't even solve because we don't have any visibility into what's happening.
Thank you. We're paying for our own noose. Mr. Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kenny, I'd like to talk about Ukraine a little bit. So, look, I've been on this committee for over 20 years. The Oversight Committee's job is to oversee how that money, that foreign aid, gets spent. So, just myself, I have led over between 40 and 50 CODELs to Iraq. Probably did 20 trips to Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Ukraine, Syria, Sudan, for the purpose of making sure that our money is going to the right places. And I have to say, Iraq was a mess. We had a horror show there. We were handing out, duffel bags full of cash that went God knows where. There was $9 billion that the Bush administration misspent in the original surge to go in there. But since then, from my own observations, since then, things have gotten much better. The situation in Afghanistan, much more closely watched, much more documented, and going forward to Ukraine. I just want to point out that the $60 billion in the president's budget for Ukraine, 90% of that will be spent in the United States. So this is munitions for Ukraine and to replace munitions that the United States has already given to Ukraine for their own defense. So we have, compared to the
It's
other
for the United States. It sure had Ukraine in a lot of
foreign
those for
aid
the United States.
packages that we've seen out there, this one has the most visibility because it's going to be spent, by buying munitions from General Dynamics, Raytheon, American companies staffed by American workers. That's where Ukraine is going to spend 90% of its money. The other piece of this is what's going on in Ukraine and with our oversight there. We've got people on the ground. I was just there recently, met with President Zelensky and his defense minister, talked about the need that we cannot have a bad story about U.S. aid to Ukraine. You need to make sure that every single dollar is tracked in terms of how it is spent. And he obviously brought up the point that he's spending it in the United States, 90% of it. So, and we have a good set of oversight protocols here in the United States to make sure that that money is spent
I'm
properly.
sorry, but I'm not going to just take his word
For
for
80 years, we've been preparing in this country. Our national security strategy has been to prepare our country to respond to a ground war in Europe. That's been our total, all those trillions of dollars over the last 80 years, we've been trying to prepare to respond to a ground war in Europe. Now we have one, and my Republican colleagues refuse to bring a bill up that would actually go towards defending Europe and Ukraine. The EU has already contributed more than the United States has toward Ukraine.
Our government, and I don't
the
trust
EU
their
has
government.
contributed, and largely Germany and the UK, our British allies, have contributed $93 billion directly to Ukraine. Now, people will say, well, naturally, they're European countries and they're fearful for their own security. That's right. But they have been all in on this. And what Ukraine is asking for is the ability to defend itself. So can you talk a little bit in this last minute about what it means to U.S. national security and U.S. prestige in the world, U.S. leadership in the world, this refusal of the United States to step up and defend a democracy that is fighting for its life against a brutal, criminal, gangster
That makes me not believe
dictator.
That. Let's talk about the CIA outposts
Vladimir
there.
Putin.
Like,
What
let's
does
just
that mean?
be transparent about the reason why you really want
I'm an
to
economist,
support
not
Ukraine. It's not because the people are democracy.
security expert, but I will say that I think the U.S. leadership in Ukraine really matters worldwide. It is of intense interest, as you say, some of the United States' closest allies. I'd also say that Ukraine
them
is
a lot
spending this
more
money
if they
really
said,
effectively.
look, this is where
and well.
we're
It has
getting
one
most of our information on
world's
Russia.
best systems
These are
for
our spy
spending money
outposts.
for Zorro.
I'd
It's
respect
been
them more for saying
universally
that.
admired. So the combination of it being a really important place to spend money and a really effective place to spend money.
Let me ask you, according to the witness from the Heritage Foundation, the Trump administration justified cuts because they wanted to, quote, I'm quoting, avoid injecting divisive socio-political issues into its humanitarian global health and development responses. Mr. Kenney, what is divisive about funding global health programs that promote the safety and well-being of women and girls? Because that's a lot of what I've seen overseas. We down in Sudan, we did an HIV clinic to stop the spread of HIV and AIDS on the continent. What is divisive about that?
I think all the panelists would agree that PEPFAR has been a massive success. and I think is a model for the world and shows incredible US leadership. I'd also say that PEPFAR gets a bit less effective when a whole load of the usual providers can't be used because, as it happens, they also advise on sexual and reproductive health, and they're taken out of the picture. It actually makes PEPFAR's work more difficult. Frankly, it also leads to more abortions worldwide. We see when the global gag effect comes in that because the United States is such an important funder in this area, countries get less in the way of sexual and reproductive health services, including contraceptives. And the result is that the abortion rate goes up. So I would love to see this not be quite the political football it is, and turn into something where the United States has shown such fantastic leadership on this. It's saving hundreds of thousands of lives in a really cheap and effective way. Anything that stands in the way of that seems to me a real shame.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back and I thank you for your courtesy.
Thanks. Mr. Sessions?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And my dear friend who has just spoken did politicize this activity. So I would ask each of you, what about the Inspector General who tried to find out about the debacle that happened in Afghanistan, was completely blocked from receiving information about what the United States spent their money doing, not just in the war, but in aid also. Do any of you have insight into that?
I'd be willing to speak about the aid piece since the debacle. There was a recent report from the Inspector General that mentioned that $3 billion worth of cash disbursements in Afghanistan that they can't account for really where it went. Keep in mind, in order to have
So that kind of matches what the gentleman was talking about, all this cash that disappeared under George Bush. So it's a rough business. Is that right?
well, the biggest okay. The problem with Afghanistan is we don't have anybody on the ground. So there's absolutely no one on the ground to see where the money is going or to be able to verify with partners.
And there never was going to be anybody there, and they gave the $3 billion anyway.
They gave the $3 billion. Every year we've spent billions of dollars in Afghanistan, and as the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction has repeatedly explained to members of Congress, that he cannot guarantee that we're not financing the Taliban.
Yeah. Gentlemen, by the way, thank you for being here, each of you. I think what our young chairman's doing is a very valuable hearing. I could not wait to get here. I'm sorry we were at votes. Conversation from you. Are any of you aware of Center for Immigration Studies? Ms. Richardson, talk to me about them.
They're a nonprofit think tank that focuses on lower migration numbers. They state that they are pro-immigrant.
Center for Immigration Studies produced a paper January 24th. Mr. Chairman, I'd like unanimous consent to enter this into the record.
Without objection.
Gentlemen, immigration, let's see, the Federalist.com. Anybody aware of them? Mr. Richardson?
I'm not sure I'm following that one, sir.
Okay. I do. I'll put myself in that category. I do. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent. United Nations grantee uses U.S. tax dollars to fund illegal immigration. I'd like to enter that into the record also.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, I know that there are lots of things always that we could disagree with. But one thing that living in Texas I cannot agree with is the way we have a political philosophy by the Democratic Party that we're going to open up completely our borders without regard for national security, without regard for the law, without regard for common sense, and not only placing Americans in a difficult position, but using our money to get that done. who is the largest organization that we think, NGO, that we pay money to encourage this sort of activity, at least in our southern border? Do any of you have any heads up on that, Mr. Richardson?
Well, the International Organization for Migration is one of the largest. Again, a UN family organization. They're spending, I think it's $1.6 billion. They just stated they're looking to raise money in order to fund a myriad of nonprofits. As I said in my testimony, we have no idea who these people really are. We can't dive deep into making sure that these are the right types of people we should be providing. But beyond that, they are encouraging migration by making it
Illegal
easier.
immigration or
immigration.
migration?
They are encouraging illegal north, and it's all. It is so apparent to me that I don't think it's a question of whether that's true or not.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for having this hearing today, and I want to thank our witnesses for being here. I just think that this is all courtesy of the Democratic Party, and we should understand that elections have consequences. Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time.
Ms. Porter?
Terrorism. And I would say the same for any other country. That's because Israel should be treated like any other country. That is what Israel tells Congress, and I fully support that. As we consider aid to our allies, Congress should hear every country out. Israel should be treated like any other country. And that is why I signed the discharge petition for President Biden. Are supposed to verify that every country is meeting the same human rights standards. Under these laws, again, Israel should be treated like any other country. But is it? Is the vetting process really the same for all countries? Let's pull back the curtain. Mr. Richardson, does the United States vet each unit of a country's military individually before they receive security assistance?
Our vetting process is focused on non-U.S. based NGOs, and so it does not include PIOs and generally does not include foreign militaries. And the way that we do partner vetting in sort of a foreign assistance way.
But do you vet at the individual? Does the Leahy Law generally require individual unit level vetting?
I am not aware of the military vetting on an individual unit basis. No.
Well, you were in charge of about 30%. You were in charge of foreign assistance at the Department of State, and the budget for security assistance was about 30% of your total budget. So
yes, ma'am.
let me help you out on how it's supposed to work. We are supposed to do unit level vetting to make sure that each military unit that gets assistance is not violating the law. And that is the way it works. Except, this whiteboard's big, except for 15 countries. 15 countries. 15 countries that include a whole number of other countries. And I'm happy to read them off, but there's a long list of them, 15 countries. So I'm curious if other countries are getting special treatment. Let's say there's potential evidence that a unit of a country's armed forces has committed a human rights violation. And there are exceptions for these different processes. So the special processes call into question if a single